ready to go. And see if I can see the audio. Right, okay. I can't. Oh, I see. All right, I can't see the audience today. Okay. See, silly me. I was trying to read a chat that's not yet active. Hello, everybody. Welcome and thank you very much for coming out to my reading today. My name is John Wiswell. I am a writer largely of short fiction. I've been published in Nature Magazine, Fireside Magazine, Pseudopod, Podcastle, and actually, I have my first story appearing in Uncanny, I believe later this year, either that or at the beginning of next year. And I wanted to read something that would be entertaining to you, most entertaining to you all. And I did a Twitter poll. And what folks voted for was a story of mine called Wet. This originally appeared in Urban Fantasy magazine. It was republished recently in the New Decameron, which is Joe Walton's project supporting a library system for refugees of Mediterranean disaster. So I will now read for you. Story again is called Simply Wet. You remember little girls in raincoats in the middle of Phoenix, Arizona summer. This one was hyperventilating into the shiny yellow hood of her coat and flailing her arms as though trying to swim through the sweltering heat beneath the train platform. It was wretched and immediately recognizable as ghost behavior. The ghosts have the knack for forgetting that they don't need to do things like hyperventilate or file taxes or piss themselves in fear. And if you ever have an inexplicable ammonia smell in your house, it's probably because some poor fool is haunting your bathroom. The few parapsychologists I've known have a hell of a time convincing ghosts to give up feudal terrors like that. I don't bother convincing. I have time. If we immortals are good for anything, it's patience. Now, no one else stopped to help her because a ghost hyperventilating sounds like guar, and like guar on a really off night. I like the sounds of all satirical metal, so I climbed under the platform to prod her. The brat ignored me at first, managing to wrap the bottom of her coat around her face. Because she was intangible, I couldn't unwrap it for her, and so I went on with my commute to the herd. On my lunch break, I picked up a few candy bars and an adult raincoat. None of them are flattering, especially when you have hips my size. Still, I wore the coat on my commute back home. Her private guar concert continued raging beneath the platform. She ignored me, which ghosts do, because ghosts know you're here about as well as you know they're here. Or if that's too woo-woo for you, they know you're here about as well as a dog knows it's got algebra homework. I had to call in sick for 6 consecutive days, lying beneath the platform beside the girl before I got through to her. And I didn't mind. Phoenix's Wi-Fi is improving, and as I said, immortals are either patient or cryogenically frozen to alleviate the horrors of eternal sentience. It was on day 6 that I sat in a puddle from a leaking draining pipe, and something about it got the kid to finally roll over, peeking out from underneath her shiny yellow hood and recognizing that there was another person there who wasn't afraid of raincoats. I was the picture of chill. After all, my raincoat protected me from this pesky puddle. She didn't resume breathing correctly because she didn't actually have lungs anymore, but she did stop thinking that she was hyperventilating. Then I offered her candy bars, which she didn't take, but she seemed to appreciate. She took my tablet instead, haunting my browser and looking up the latest BTS videos. I deleted my cache later. After that, she followed me to work. She wouldn't eat the candy bars, but she would levitate them, clutched together like a deck of fattening playing cards, perhaps waiting for me to want one. She followed me to the blood drive and then later to genetic testing. They never figure out anything, but the scientists get so excited over their confusion. And to the set of a snuff film I've been working on. On the one hand, I'm encouraging a problematic industry, but on the other, I've gotten a couple of actors into very necessary therapy. The kid didn't so much as blink at anything, except when I washed my hands at the end of the day. She gave a mighty Dave Brocky shriek and fled through the walls at the sight of the running cat. On the commute home, she refused to ride over Salt River. I saw her grip the lapels of her raincoat before she vanished, and I didn't see her again until the next morning when I passed over the river again. She poofed into existence on the seat beside me, raincoat and candy bars intact, much to the dismay of the heavyset banker who had been trying to hit on me. It never would have worked out anyway. He didn't like war. She followed me to a hostage negotiation. Now, this middle-aged man was driven to the edge by a cocktail of bad investments and a rude nephew and losing his wife to cervical cancer, and he was stunned to be offered 2 hostages in favor for the one office girl that he had at gunpoint. It's a great trick that more immortals should play. I don't care about getting shot. Neither did my little raincoat buddy, who took 3 through the chest and only registered that her butterfinger had been blown to smithereens. She didn't really care, and that's how we started bonding. While ghosts only think they sleep, she was adorable in her faux dreams. One night she slept possessing my sock drawer. The next 2 nights she possessed a box of Kleenex, and with a tissue uprooting and drifting to the floor every so often. She'd sleep in my bed if I kept the bathroom door closed. If I left it open, though, when I showered, she'd run herself a block away, and I'd need to bust out my raincoat again to get her to calm down. And her freakouts always broke my plumbing. You've already figured it out because you're a smart person. You must be. You're listening to me, and I don't have dumb audiences. I didn't want to figure it out, obviously. Obvious as it was, like a baby would spill its juice and my raincoat buddy would freak out. And even in an Arizona summer, you couldn't avoid water. I tried staying in the apartment for days on end with her, but eventually a TV show would feature rain and she'd go haunting the entire building. My flat screen would drip like a rain gutter. She couldn't find peace. And yes, that's the point of ghosts, but it grates on you when you're coming to love someone. I wanted to keep my friend. Do you know she started stealing candy bars for me? Like always Butterfingers. I knew what was going on weeks beforehand, denying all the way, because you don't live through all the ages I have and maintain interest in people without some willful ignorance. We had our breakthrough on the night of the apartment collapse. I went into this collapsing building because if it gave way completely, the fire department would dig me out. They always dig me out in a maximum of like 14 days. They're great people. There are people like them in every generation, which is why I keep coming back to civilization. And my raincoat buddy followed me into an auxiliary basement. My intrepid raincoat buddy possessed some rubble to let me through and snag a pair of 10-year-old twins, which we got to safety. And then I heard another voice, one that turned out to not really be a voice at all, but some pipes bursting and squealing air. And I went deeper, and she went deeper with me. And the water was trickling down into the basement at first, only a rivulet down one crack in a cement wall. And my raincoat buddy froze, staring at the leak, and the longer she stared, the stronger the flow became. I got between her and the trickle, and it tapered, and it was a wet haunter. And my distraction only lasted so long as the water level kept rising with no source of flow. The kid was gasping and clutching at her throat and screaming nonsense metal at the ceiling. Except ghosts don't really talk in nonsense or guar or Metallica. They talk in feeling, in a language that makes total sense somewhere else than here. I know feeling. I'm told I don't have any left, but I sure know, Daddy, come back, and the knob is too slippery, and it's too wet in here, it won't stop raining. When I hear it sung by the dead, I'm never going to forget it. I'm immortal. Never is atrociously real to me. Her fingers raked through the water without a splash, and even though she could float in any substance she wanted, she sank to the bottom. I drowned with her, unable to hug her shoulders, but giving her someone nearby. making sure she wasn't alone. Firemen tried to rescue us to no avail for her intangibility. It was another week before they drained the basement, and another 2 days of mildew smells before she could raise her head. Another 4 days passed before she could be convinced she was capable of leaving that rubble. She had been nest up to the surface, and we passed into daylight, and I've never been so grateful for a rainless day in Arizona. Even then, even drowning over and over again in the dark with her, I considered not solving her problem. Ghosts are the best company for immortals, better company than other immortals, because ghosts don't change. If they're stuck on you, they remain stuck. If they're affectionate, they remain affectionate. I could have had a raincoat buddy living in my tissue box until civilization went out of style. Ghosts don't get over things on their own. It's why they're stuck. They can be handy. They're also very easy to abuse. And I don't stand for abuse. Immortals change, you see, and that's why I bought some floaties. 2 inflatable arm thingies that you strap around your biceps, and a red pool noodle shaped like a giant Twizzlers, and an inner tube that my raincoat buddy actually loved playing in and possessing so long as it remained stationary on the carpet. 10 minutes? You got it. I began pushing the inner tube around my apartment, tricking her into thinking she was getting rides. She didn't know where she was at the end until the shower sloshed against the drain. My water pressure stinks, and the shower drain has never once clogged, no matter what I'd accidentally let drip down there. That day, within minutes of the kid trotting in, the entire bathroom was flooded up to my knees. She scurried up to the sink, staring at me with the most hurt betrayal in her eyes, no understanding, just weapons-grade incomprehension. I stepped into the inner tube, hoisted it up to my exceptionally broad hips, and switched on the sink right in front of her. I've never heard Guar sound so sincerely mournful before, and I hope you never do. I'm patient, and I'd already drowned for her before. I rode the inner tube up to the ceiling, all the while gesturing at her arm floaties and to the buoyant Twizzlers noodle bobbling in front of her, and she didn't believe that she could be buoyant. But over the hours, she couldn't ignore the toys, and she couldn't help haunting them. It was as illogical as an adult in a raincoat lying fearlessly beside her in a train station. It made no sense, and you could never hammer it into a reasoned argument. But if you're smart, my friend, you know what mattered is how she felt. Ghosts speak in feeling. And while I hope you never know what it feels like to simultaneously think you're drowning when no adult cares enough to come back for you, and to feel your body drawn up by inflatable floaties, and to bounce against the ceiling as the shower water that shouldn't even be there gets beyond the ceiling tiles itself and begins receding, well, I bet you can sympathize. And that's all the feeling that a living person needs. She was looking at the floaties, levitating them above the receding water line when she disappeared. No glance at me, no final sigh, no words, not even a quick rendition of Rode By. That was it. As quick as a mortal life being snuffed out, but rarer, and so it hurt more to not get to say goodbye. I bought a child's yellow raincoat later to keep in my closet. I lie that it's hers when I tell this story to try to get laid. I'm not above everything. She left nothing behind, though, which to me is quite the happy ending. Wherever people go when they die is none of my business. But wherever it is, she took everything with her. And that's the end of Wet. We do have some time left over. If anybody would like to ask questions either in the group chat or in Discord, I'm happy to field things right up until the end of the time. And thank you very much, Kevin, for fielding the chat. Thank you, Shell. Um, yeah, that was my first pro short story sale. Um, I've kind of been surprised how it keeps circulating, but it is wonderful that it keeps touching people. Ooh. The Shell S asks, what's the most haunted feeling place I've ever been to? And I have been out in the wilds of New York and Massachusetts where the Leatherman was supposed to have lived. Um, and, uh, those dilapidated 1900 early 1900s, late 1800s buildings that have half collapsed. They're in the middle of wildernesses that have wound up not being developed. So all there is the ruin of a random house with nothing else nearby. It feels very pleasantly eerie. At least in daylight, it feels pleasantly eerie. Maybe at night it would feel a little too Blair Witch. Uh, that would be among the more haunted, or more the more haunting feeling, right? Because most of the resonant feelings about hauntedness is feeling that we're not alone when nobody is around. Um, Sometimes it's a companionship. I feel like that in cemeteries there's just a reverence. Thank you, Lawrence. Thank you very much. This is actually the first time I think I've ever read this story out loud to an audience. I read it a lot when I was submitting it. I'd like to bring stories that I've never performed anywhere before for every reading to sort of give something special to anybody who shows up to listen. I really do appreciate it. Thank you, Dave. Yeah, there are pleasant eerinesses. I think there's a lot of attention that goes to negative or scary eeriness. Um, but I always enjoy a little unease. I guess it's because I've had unease for so long. Um, and if there were something out there, you'd hope that you could make it at home. Certainly, that's my brand, right? Is that like if there is anything that could be scary, I would like to write a story about knitting in a sweater and making it feel okay, right? Like that's what I like to write. I can't help it. The work in progress I have right now is yet another. It's just pyrokinetics, trying to make pyrokinetics feel safe. Um, and I think, spoiler here, the thing that I'm writing next is all the myths of all the things that are supposed to hold the world in the sky up, creating a therapy group for each other now that physics have disproven they don't exist anymore. Um, I can't stay away from big scary things and making them, trying to make them feel okay. Uh, and thank you, Shell. Yeah, there's always a discourse about what immortality would really do to somebody's psychology, and I feel like it's often presented as a monolith. And I wanted to like do little world building nuggets that there are immortals that have processed immortality differently than the narrator. But if I was going to write about an immortal, it would have to be that altruism took root in their heart. Um, I guess not too giving tree, but giving tree enough of an unending being. Uh, all right, so I think we're coming up on the last 60 seconds. If anybody has any last questions, I'm happy to field anything. Um, Otherwise, I really appreciate you folks coming out today. Uh, it was really a pleasure to be able to read. I am working on a novel. All my beta readers have turned it back. It seems like I did it. It is the queerest thing I've ever written. It is full of different kinds of queer people road tripping across an epic fantasy. I think that if you like anything I write, you will like it. It is very madcap, very buddy comedy. Oh my god, it's like wet times 50,000 word count. I guess you will. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. All right, since we're past 30 seconds, everybody, I hope that you have a lovely rest of NASFiC. I'll be on a panel tonight talking about dystopias. We'll see how warm-hearted we can get there. Thank you all again for coming out.